I am going to be at the Blast Premiere Spring Final at the Wembley Arena from June the 14th onwards. Check out this video's description and their collaboration with Revolut to see how you could win some tickets to the event and a backstage tour. Counter-Strike 2 is based on the Source 2 engine, which isn't exactly new, but is a lot less old than the Source 1 engine is that powered previous versions of Counter-Strike. And the move to this new engine has caused all kinds of problems, especially for people whose computers could handle CSGO kind of okay, but CS2 not so much. And if they want to carry on playing their favourite game, they're out of luck, for CSGO has been discontinued. So because of that, everything in the new game has come under attack for being needlessly heavy on our system requirements, like the high-res textures everywhere, the detailed yet seemingly unnecessary props littering the streets, that beautiful water, the volumetric smoke clouds, and the HUD? And weapon model? What about that version number in the bottom left-hand corner? Bet that's sapping some frame rates as well. Take your knife animation. When you're swinging it about on screen, do you think your frame rate increases because less of the screen is spent drawing the knife? Or do you think your frame rate decreases because of how demanding that animation is to be played and because now more of the background has to be rendered instead? You needn't wonder much longer, because fortunately it was tested just the other day in this video, and it raises a fascinating point that I'll be returning to several times in this video from different perspectives. But first, let's see their findings. But even faster, this video's sponsor, Revolut, which can be used by individuals and by businesses for your financial needs. Sign up using the link in this video's description to get £20 off after your first transaction with the service, and a chance to win tickets to the Blast Premiere Spring Final for you and a friend, as well as a backstage tour, a chance to meet your favourite players, and meet and greet access. Tired of lugging around cash, of always being short, of taking a hit from withdrawal fees, of losing 20s down the back of radiators and helplessly watching as the wind blows a small fortune over the fence and into the next door swimming pool? Me too. This is where this video sponsor, Revolut, comes in to help. Revolut is a financial super app for your everyday money needs, already used by over 40 million users to make over 300 million monthly transactions. Transfer money from other apps to Revolut within seconds, convert it into over 30 different currencies fee-free within your monthly limit, Monday to Friday, allowing you to use Revolut to pay for stuff hassle-free both at home and when abroad. The Revolut app comes with a wealth of handy features like an ATM finder, a tool to create disposable one-use cards to pay for stuff once without the risk of ever being charged by that service again, as well as a saving feature that rounds your purchases up and stashes the excess away in a vault for a rainy day. Check Revolut out using the link in this video's description to get £20 after your first transaction. Secondly, let's return to this first video clip again, which shows that the frame rate in CS2 appears to increase whenever the knife model is being swung about, and not just by a little bit, by a full 25 FPS, simply for swinging a knife about. How about that? FPS Doug was right all along. The video then disables the view model completely, and the frame rate increases by 17%. The conclusion here was that the less of the screen the weapon model took up, the better the frame rate became, and thus the video concluded that the weapon models aren't optimized. So let's take a look into the complicated world of frame rates, frame times, and excessive details. Look at this wall. What a lovely wall. Staring at it gets me 944 FPS. Then, if I disable the HUD, this increases to 969. That's 25 FPS more straight away. If I disable the weapon model as well, it increases all the way to 1016 FPS. And lastly, removing this little bit of text at the bottom gives me an extra 4 FPS. So it was sapping the frame rate all along. And doing this brings my total FPS to 1020. In other words, all those pointless things like the HUD and the weapon model and that text at the bottom of the screen was dropping me by over 75 FPS, or 8% of my total frame rate. Insane. The drop in this more intensive scene wasn't quite so dramatic, and I only gained about 3% by disabling all these things. But that's still 3% extra performance I freed up from disabling stuff I didn't need. This was all done using my powerful gaming PC, which has these specs here. It's just about the most powerful PC you can get. So I then moved over to this, which is probably the least powerful PC you can currently get. And disabling the HUD and weapon model benefited me even more. In this scene, it improved my frame rates by 18%, and by 5% in this one. I guess this makes sense. When there's less being drawn on screen, then the HUD and weapon will be dictating what the frame rate is more, won't they? And then, because it was Friday evening and I had nothing better to do, I tested all of the different weapons on my slow PC to see which one slowed it down the most, scoring just 85 FPS with the machine guns, while switching to Zeus boosted my frame rate to almost 96 FPS, which was closely followed by the grenades as well. So what's happening here? Just look at the size of them. The bigger your gun, the more it seems to slow your PC down. So clearly, if you want to win fights, then you should be fighting with a Zeus and not with big guns like snipers and rifles. By this point, it was early on Saturday morning and I still had nothing better to do. So I counted the number of polygons, vertices and the amount of surface area each of these guns in Counter-Strike took up to see if that was responsible for the difference in frame rate with these weapons equipped. And you know what? I think this might be it. Look at this! There is a strong correlation between how many polygons a weapon model has and how much it slows your PC down. The elites are one exception, but then you're holding two of these mothers, so it does still hold up. But the other exception is the M4A4, which for some inexplicable reason slows your computer down less than it should do. Is this because a lot of its polygons aren't visible when held in game? Maybe. One thing's for sure though, we finally found one way in which this gun is better than the suppressed M4. But don't worry, for there are ways to improve your performance using any of these weapons, because how you configure the view model and how much it takes up of the screen will determine how much it slows your PC down, and I improved my frame rates by 2 or 3 simply by making the view model as central and as low down and as small on screen as possible. However, there are times when doing this will have the opposite effect, and to demonstrate why, take a look at this scene, a simple corridor leading to an open doorway with lots of stuff outside. If I enable wireframe mode, then you can see that most of what's being rendered on screen is outside this doorway. So if I move the gun model like this so that it blocks the door, it stops everything behind it from being rendered. Yep, so having a big gun model can actually speed your PC up, provided it's blocking out a very demanding area of the environment. You know Crysis 2? No? How about this? Yeah, you thought this was just a silly face, but it was actually a jab at the game's excessive use of tessellation to make stuff look bumpier and spikier than it needed to be. This feature wasn't that well optimised in Crysis 2, and it resulted in ludicrously detailed stuff slowing your PC down needlessly. Take this infamous million polygon concrete block. If this was placed somewhere in a Counter-Strike map, covering it up with your weapon model would possibly boost your FPS. And to prove this, I jumped on over to my slow PC and put to the test whether having your gun model conceal an open doorway could actually improve your frame rate. And there it is, 33-ish frames a second with your gun model equipped, to just 32 and a bit-ish with it disabled. Undeniable proof right there, that sometimes your gun can block enough detail to make it actually improve your frame rate. Slightly. So while in this example the culling behind the gun model slightly improved my frame rate, I suspect there are other times where this process of trying to figure out which bits of the scene not to render from behind your gun model can actually slow your PC down more than it helps, depending on the size and shape of the weapon you're holding. So maybe this is why the frame rate improved when he was swinging his knife about in this example, but an in-depth video on GPU culling can wait for another time. So I'm not saying this optimization feature should influence the way you play the game. There's enough to worry about in a Counter-Strike match without doing that stuff as well. But it does mean that, as the years go by and as the game's environments get increasingly detailed and elaborate, then having a large model on screen that's blocking out a lot of this stuff could actually begin to improve your frame rates more than it hinders them. Of course, by then computers will have moved on and you'll probably have jumped to a computer so powerful that these kinds of things no longer matter to its frame rate anyway. But it makes you think, doesn't it? Here they are, the results that you've been waiting for. The 100% mark is the frame rate I got with everything visible on screen, and it's represented by the yellow bar. The blue bar is when everything is disabled, and sandwiched between these two results are what happens if you disable just the HUD or weapon. So let's go through each of these. On my fast PC, when staring at a wall, you can see that disabling the HUD and weapon model both helped frame rates improve by several % each. The difference was a lot smaller on the Inferno example, which was a much more complex scene, so it would be expected that the HUD and weapon elements would have a smaller overall impact. And you can see that the slow PC's results are kind of the same but amplified by about double, presumably because HUD and weapon models have a greater impact on a slower system. I'm actually surprised the impact wasn't greater, if I'm honest. So is this impact good? Bad? What are we comparing this against? We need to compare Counter-Strike 2 against another game, and you know which one I'm going to test. No you don't, I'm going to test Doom Eternal, one of the best optimised games of all time. Although saying that, my frame rate in this game isn't quite as high as it is in Counter-Strike 2, so you decide. I tested this game in 2 different locations, and disabling the HUD, and the HUD only because I couldn't find a way of disabling the weapon model, improved my frame rates by quite similar amounts to how they were improved in CS2 by removing the HUD, ranging between 1 and 2% more performance. So there you go, Counter-Strike 2's HUD has a similar frame rate impact to the one seen in Doom Eternal. Now I will test the game that you were thinking of, CSGO. How did the HUD in that game impact FPS? Turns out quite a lot. This really put it into perspective for me, and I think the bar that spikes up can probably tell us whether the PC was being processor or graphics card limited. My fast PC seemed to be slowed down a lot more by the HUD than it was the weapon model, while my slow PC was the opposite, not seeming to care if the HUD was disabled, but greatly appreciating it when the gun model disappeared. Maybe because my slow PC has a terrible graphics card. So at a glance, it seems to show that Counter-Strike 2's HUD and weapon models have less of an impact on performance than CS2's did. But I'm not sure whether it's because they're better optimised now, or just because the rest of the game is now a lot more demanding in comparison. In a way, this seems counterproductive, doesn't it? Surely in an older, easier to run game like CSGO, you might imagine a fast, modern PC would be able to handle the HUD and weapon model without impacting frame rate at all. But it actually does the opposite, at least with an uncapped frame rate. As you'd expect, my GeForce 4090 Intel 3900K rig had no problem rendering this wall at thousands of frames a second. But alarmingly, disabling the HUD and weapon model boosted my frame rate by a further 460 FPS. These elements are slowing down the fastest PC in the world by 460 FPS! That right there is enough to feed several impoverished gamers on basic PCs. But you know what? None of this matters. For frame rates are only frame rates, and unless people are trying to show off, nobody actually cares about frame rates. So while it hurts to think that your HUD is depriving you of 20, 30 or 200 FPS, what does that actually matter? As in, what difference is that actually making to your gaming experience? You see, we've been approaching this from frame rates, and that's the wrong perspective to take, because what really matters is your frame times. Get ready to be confused, because at first glance, none of the maths adds up and none of this is going to make a lot of sense. So let's start simple. How responsive a game feels depends on input latency. You want as little of that stuff as possible. Gaming at the low frame rate of 30 means there's approximately 33 milliseconds between each frame. That is a lot, and it can be felt. Doubling your frame rate from 30 to 60 FPS vastly improves your frame times by 16 milliseconds. That's a difference that can easily be felt. However, doubling your frame rate from 500 to 1000 FPS will only drop the frame time by 1 millisecond, which can't be felt so noticeably, if at all. And that example I showed at the start of the video where the frame rate increased by 60 FPS from 340 to 400 FPS by disabling the weapon model completely, that sped its frame times up, yes, but by less than half a millisecond. So I went back and revised all those frame rate drops I've recorded so far as frame time differences. This is now the impact that the HUD and weapon model have on every frame that's being rendered. That nearly 500 FPS drop from 2300 to 1800 FPS, that works out, per frame, as a 0.1 millisecond difference. Unnoticeable. So I highlighted all of these results that were greater than half a millisecond, and as you can see, only the slow PC's results got highlighted. It's worth highlighting these results though, because the people who should care about the impact the HUD and weapon model might have aren't the ones who have so many frames a second already that they can afford to lose a few dozen. The ones who should care are the people who are on such potato PCs that every frame counts. For them, sure, disabling a HUD might make less than a millisecond difference per frame, but that small difference might help make their experience ever so slightly better. It might be the difference between a CPU and GPU bottleneck, and so while it may still lag, it may be a different feeling and better kind of lag. So let's ask, can we do away with the HUD and weapon model? I think we can all agree that the HUD does serve a valuable gameplay purpose and probably is worth a performance impact a lot of the time. So short of being blind to the current situation elsewhere on the map, what if we could just put all the HUD information somewhere else, like on a different display of some sort? That could help people on slow systems, though that would mean them getting a different display of some sort, relaying all the information to an app on their phone that they could put beside them when playing, perhaps. As for the weapon model, I see you sat there. I know what you're doing there. I know why Valve won't want us concealing, simplifying or hiding you away. Custom weapon skins are Valve's billion-dollar side project. It doesn't matter if you think they're worth the performance impact on screen, because Valve certainly does, just like they do with the custom agent skins. They're here because of money, and all you people limping along on minimum spec systems, you're the collateral. Ultimately, HUD and weapon models might be dropping your frame rate by tens or hundreds, but unless they're significantly impacting your frame times, then you shouldn't worry about it too much. And if your frame times are already bad, then the maps and smoke grenades are likely far bigger concerns. And to get around this, then you should buy a better PC. But in the meantime, while there's not a lot you can do, you can try using your weapon models to hide high poly assets, or at the very least, to spend all your time flailing your knife about. Because as everyone knows, your PC runs faster with a knife.